Earlier this week, I built a pedalboard for my HX Stomp XL. This is essentially the rig I've been using for a year plus, just all the pedals finally thrown together on a board and mounted down with cabling, and everything's really neatly done. So I have a bunch of festival sets coming up with this kind of like folk jam group that I've been playing with a lot lately, and I just wanted to be prepared for fast changeovers and have all the presets sorted out and leveled and everything. So I thought this was a great opportunity just to share with you the pieces that I decided to pair with the Stomp XL to make it a little bit more powerful, and my reasoning behind all that, how I built the presets, the global settings and everything. So yeah, I basically just started with a spare piece of oak that I had laying around. Recently I've been doing some work in my studio. I put those doors on. That goes to my kitchen and to my living room, so my wife's definitely happy to have a little bit more sound isolation from what used to be the dining room here, and my instruments will be happy to be a little bit better humidified in the winter months as we approach. So yeah, long story, I just had a piece of extra oak laying around that I grabbed and I cut to size. These little handlebars came from, I think, Creation Music Supply. They're kind of generic, you can find them at a bunch of different places, but I'll link these below and all the other parts that I'm using here. Also just these kind of generic rubber feet that are at the four corners. And then for cabling, I'm using EBS compact, like super low profile cables. They're pre-made. I was going to do custom soldered cables like I did for my large HX Stomp board years ago, but I didn't have the correct connectors. I didn't have enough of the super low profile square plug connectors, so I just used some EBS cables I had laying around. We've got the Red Eye preamplifier here on your left, which has a super high impedance input, great for acoustic instruments, which is what I'm going to be using this board with a lot. So this is my board for basically anytime I need a really compact ampless rig. The large Stomp board, and there's a whole video series putting that together, by the way, if you want to check that out after this video. It was a huge process. That's what I'm basically using for playing with my jazz fusion, like ambient type group, and also when I'm creating ambient soundscape music at home. It's just laid out really nicely. You have all these knobs and buttons to create specific sounds that you need, and then also when I'm playing out with that group that has such specific sounds for all these different songs, I'm using the Morningstar controller to send MIDI information through presets and stuff like that. For this board, it's just going to be much more simple. I'm basically just using stomp switch mode. So I have the preamplifier, as I was saying, with the input. It has an effects loop, it has a boost, a treble boost if I want, and then it also balances the output to an XLR cable with the ground lift, which is, in my opinion, one of the faults of the smaller Line 6 Helix devices, is that they don't give you that ground lift. That's something that's really important. Every now and then you're going to need it, and especially with festival sets, anything that can just make things quicker for setup and tear down, the better, I think. So that is powered either with phantom power or with a battery. It does have an input for a 9-volt supply, but basically how I'm powering this board is just through the single Stomp adapter. The Ditto is not something I'm going to use a lot. Every now and then I do solo gigs, solo acoustic stuff, or like jazz type shows, and I'll use a looper. I will probably just end up bringing a separate 9-volt power supply, like a one-spot type thing for that when I need it, but otherwise when it's not powered, it just passes the signal and I don't need to worry about it. I have the Stomp XL in the effects loop of the preamp, the Ditto after the Stomp, and then the Dunlop DVP Mini here, the Expression setup. There's a dip switch you have to flip in there, and then you have to flip the polarity in the Stomp to make it work. And this is set up for Expression 2. This little Rockstock single controller is set up for Footswitch 7. So let's take a look at the presets, how I'm designing them. So the way I've laid out presets on the Stomp is that essentially I just have one preset per instrument. For some of these, like for my fretted electric, I have two different ones. One for kind of more of a traditional clean violin sound, and then one with a bunch of overdrive and stuff that would fit more in a rock setting. A few of these presets I haven't made yet, so this will be for my Martin. I've got a preset for my Eastman acoustic, which has a Fishman Rare Earth blend mic magnetic combo pickup in it. Then I've got my mandolin preset. Pickup in this is the K&K body transducer. I've got a pickup for a banjo for my acoustic violin, which I haven't really made yet. And so basically the way I'm using it is just with different presets for each instrument. And if I need more tones than I can fit in one preset, I'll just make a second one like I did for the violin. So yeah, generally for foot switches, the first two I'm leaving open for like stuff like modulation, or in this case for mandolin, I've got an auto wah Then I've got phaser. The compression, I chose to leave it on all the time. I can turn it off if feedback becomes an issue, but when I recall the preset, I want the compression to be turned on automatically. And then this is the same for pretty much every preset. I've got a tap delay, so this is rigged up and connected to the tap tempo here. Then I've got a solo, which is fixed at like, I think generally it's between like 350 and 400 milliseconds, and this is just for a solo delay. So more repeats lower in mix than the tap delay. This bottom row is pretty much always the same for the different presets that I'm using. So on the left, I've set that up as a tap tempo delay with just a simple quarter note subdivision, so you can tap in a dotted eighth rhythm if you wanted. So here's the quarter note. And then you have your dotted eighth subdivision if you wanted that. You just have to be a little bit nimble with your feet. So generally the tap tempo delay has a higher mix and lower repeats, a brighter sound altogether too. The solo delay, S delay is what I've called it here, is lower in the mix, more repeats, and kind of a warmer sound, sometimes with modulation included. And the time parameter is usually between like 350 and 425 milliseconds. It also boosts volume just by 1 decibel, just to help me punch through a little bit more if I feel like it. The groups that I play with are usually pretty sensitive to dynamics, so they'll come down for me, but this just puts me up on top just a little bit if I need it. And then Footswitch 3 is always reserved for reverb. So reverb is actually always on. However, I've set up parameter adjustments here. You can see it flipping between a few there. So like the decay goes up, the pre-delay goes up a little bit, the damping comes down to get a warmer sound out of it. The mix usually comes up a little bit, and then modulation changes and stuff too. So we have like the basic reverb tone, which you might not even notice really, and then the full reverb tone. For acoustic instruments, I like plate verbs a lot. For violin, I'm generally using like a concert hall type reverb. For electric guitar, I'm using spring a lot. It's just kind of, I think that's built into what the sound that you expect from the instrument, and so I just decided to stick to that. Footswitch 7 here is set up with a 3 decibel boost, just kind of as a last resort if I need to, you know, stick out a little bit on top. What I don't like doing is playing hard to achieve volume, because the sound of the instrument changes a lot, especially when you have like a pickup and you're playing amplified rather than with a mic. The sound of the instrument changes a lot. It sounds really plucky with the with piezo pickup, and so I try to avoid that. Play softer with my right hand and then boost it non-organically, you know, with the modeler. So that is set up on the reverb block. That's set up with a parameter change. Basically, it's just changing the level parameter in the reverb to go from 0 dB up to 3 to plus 3 dB. The volume pedal, I'm not using a volume block in this. You can see it's already filled with 8 blocks. So to get around that, I picked another block that was earlier in the chain. I think I'm using the compressor here for it. And essentially I am just using the Footswitch to control level. Usually I like somewhere around like 18 decibels sweep. So at the lowest setting, if I need to unplug the instrument, you can still hear it pop a little bit. It's not bad. But if I still need like a full volume swell, then I get that with 18 decibels. If you drop the minimum value all the way down to 0 or -60, which is what these blocks go to, the usable range of the volume pedal is really limited in that, you know, if you want to adjust your volume, if you want to lower the volume a little bit, even just turning it slightly basically cuts your signal completely. So my solution is to set the maximum setting at unity, as if the unit were bypassed, and then drop it down usually around like 18 decibels for the minimum setting. To switch between presets, the easiest thing to do, so I don't have to bend down and scroll, is I've set it up on 4 preset banks. So I'll hit the mode switch here, and then I have a bunch of different ones to pick from. So you can see mandolin, acoustic, my Eastman, my live acoustic, then I have my acoustic violin and my banjo if I need it. Typically for these gigs, I'm using acoustic violin, mandolin, and acoustic guitar. So I don't really need a banjo, but it's in there. If you need to change between banks, you would just page through the banks here, up and down. We can get to some of the other presets that I have. And then you can hit that and then hit the mode to go to the preset window so you can actually see what you're using there. So that's basically it. If you wanted to talk about global settings a little bit, I have a few things here. So I'm probably going to be running at line level. As I was designing the presets, I had it set up for instrument, but when I go to play, I usually go with line level, just so they don't have to boost it so much at the board. The one annoying thing I've noticed is that people kind of expect an instrument level sound. So probably like 75% of the time when I go out there and the first time I play, it's pretty loud. So that kind of makes me want to switch back to instrument level output, change that parameter. But yeah, it's not like a super big deal. I think it maybe might just save a little bit of time if I just, went with a mic level source. Foot switches here, you'll want to have it set up in 4-switch stomp mode. Otherwise, the up and down arrows become useful for banks or preset switching. If you press them both together, you can go to snapshot mode, but I don't really use snapshots with this. So that's basically it. That's the way that I set up everything. So that is my Stomp XL pedalboard build, my kind of DIY at-home rig that I decided to put together. It's pretty simple. If you are looking to go down this road and build something yourself, there's a few tips I have basically is, make a list of all the equipment you're going to use, all the different pedals, and then also an order of how the pedals are being chained together. What's the first pedal, the second one, the third, etc. Lay it out on the floor in a couple different positions and make sure that you have an idea of how the pedal board's going to be laid out. Make sure that, if you wanted to elevate something like this, that you account for that. And don't forget to measure for the 1/4-inch jacks and the power cables, honestly. That's a common mistake. I've done that before. And then finally, once you have all that information, find a case that's going to work before you build the rig. Don't do the opposite thing and build the rig and try and find a case for it, because it might be really hard and you might end up with a case that's way too big or something that is almost fitting, but you have to modify the case in some way. So, get the equipment list, put it together, measure it, buy the case, make the pedal board fit the case. That's my advice. If you have any questions on anything I mentioned in this video, you can leave a comment down below or get in contact with me directly on my website, and happy to answer questions, HX Stomp related or whatever. Thanks for watching. Take care. If you like the video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps me out. And I also have like 70 to 80 something videos on the HX Stomp, just like preset demos, walkthroughs, like describing different ways to use it, creative ways and advanced editing, whatever. If you're interested in that, check out the playlist down there. Thanks for watching the video again, and I'll see you in the next one.